This will be number 5 in our series we're doing with up-and-coming million-dollar earner Joe Tansey out of New Jersey. And we're talking about developing leaders, and this was my system that I used for going from, to me, this was the key, Joe, of how I went in 1979, my first year in North Carolina, from 56 recruits to 1980, 1,800, 1981, we did 7,200 recruits. In 1982, we did 15,000 recruits, and that added up to around 22, 3, 2, 4, somewhere close to about 24,000 recruits over 3 years. How did that happen? Well, obviously there were some levels of control, some things that allowed us to do that kind of compounding and avoid slumps. And that was before the company had all our computer reporting every systems in, and that's when Art called and said, Larry, shut your base shop down and work with all those people you've developed. And so it seemed to be like a good idea at the time. That's what I did. And I won't talk to you about why that was a bad move, but I will say that's what I did. So how do we get to this point? How did we have this consistency? Is that an interesting topic, Joe?
Absolutely. All right.
That's
what I want to know.
All right. I'll tell you, and I'll promise you, you may do it, but nobody else will, because I've told people this since 1980, nobody ever does it, okay? Nobody ever does it. I don't understand. But we got up to where we were doing, we wound up doing, I think at our peak, we recruited like 400 or 500 people. We make 500 sales. It was a juggernaut. And so now people are struggling to do 1 or 2 a month. And we had hundreds. And I had, 60 direct full-time people, 40 different offices, probably 50 different offices inside the training center.
Wow.
And I ran it a lot like, because I had the experience from being in construction and working with, I ran it like a hierarchy type base shop. And that's, to me, the model of greatness. Where you're running a training center, you still have the control over them, you can still develop them, but they're doing it almost like they're totally on their own, because that's where they're going to learn the most. And so I had some philosophies about it. Number 1 is they would never work for me. They wouldn't work for me as hard as they would for themselves. Well, some people say, well, I've got a whole office full of people who are supposed to be working for themselves or on commission, and they don't seem to work at all. Well, because they're in your office, and you're paying the bills and everything, and you don't do anything to really make them feel like they have their own office, their own business. They think they're just like an employee. So I did things to create, to break out of that. The other thing is, I had the idea nobody wants to do, I knew this, no business person, let's just say man, woman, person, nobody wants to do the books. No one wants to do the books. But if you don't do the books, what are the books? The books are the numbers. No businessman, they want to be starting a new business. They want to talk to the clients. They want to be out circulating. They want to be trying new things, developing new products, coming up with new services, mingling. They don't want to sit down and be an accountant. They don't want to sit and look at the numbers, but you'll either do the books. But every businessman learns you'll either do it or you'll work for somebody who will. If you don't know your numbers, you are you're like the blind leading the blind. But if you don't know your numbers, you are like the blind leading the blind. And the Bible says if the blind lead the blind, they both fall in the ditch. That's the way most leaders are. They're blindly leading their people in the ditch. They don't know what their numbers are, where they are, where they're headed. They're just wandering around like idiots. And then they have a slump. Oh, my God, I have a slump. Well, of course, you moron. Take the blindfolders off. Been wandering around for 30 days like an idiot. Take charge. Did you see that you were marching off in the wrong direction? And then halfway through the month, you turned around and made a 90-degree hit into another wrong direction. And then 4 days later, you marched off in another wrong direction. Don't you even know where you're headed?
Yeah.
So anyway, I kind of, the deal is you're training people for big income, to be their own boss, to lead other people to greatness. Well, if you're not going to know your numbers, I know people don't want to do that. Nobody wants. No one do it. But you cannot be independent if you don't do that. I get a little wound up about this, Joe, and I get a little wound up.
We just had a meeting last night, and I'm asking my leaders where their numbers at last month and last year. They all look at me like freaking deer in the headlights. It's like, how the hell you know what the freak you're doing if you don't know your numbers? How do you know?
They don't know whether it's 2 years ago, last year, this year, whatever. They don't know what they're going to do. They don't know. They have no plan. They are employees, and they say, well, and they're trying to do a business person's job. What is a CEO? CEO has to make a projection and hit it. We heard Rick Williams, the masterful performance on the numbers of where we're in the industry, how we're positioned for greatness. He knows those numbers like this. You've got to have a little bit of that, at least a little bit of that, if you're going to be a leader. And so here's what I knew. I started them at district. It's like this. It's like your kids. See, no kid wants to do homework. Now, you guys probably had a bunch of little nerds grow up in your family, but the kids I know, no one wants to do homework.
No, my kids still don't like to do homework. That's our issue
right
now.
Yeah. Now, some kids like to do homework, but I've never met one anyway. But do they have to do homework to get them to do homework anyway, Joe?
Oh, absolutely, they got to do it.
Why? Because they're going to have to pass tests. They're going to be tested. The same thing in business. You're going to be tested, knuckleheads. Wake up and smell the roses. Do you want to be in third grade the rest of your life?
Wow.
Well, do your homework so you can get promoted up there. Otherwise, all these other guys, your friends are going to be promoted up and leave you behind. Same way in the training center. All these buddies you have in your training, they're going to be promoted up. They're going to be running their own office. They're going to be out of here. They're going to be living a great life, having their own businesses, having their own teams. You're going to be sitting back here sweeping out the closet again because you're too sorry to do your numbers. Grow up, develop some. We've got to. You got to see. Here's where I am right now, yelling at them. What you did last night.
Yep.
Doesn't work, does it?
Nope.
You got to have a system. Must have a system. Here's the greatest example I ever saw of that. I ever heard of this. You take a cop. Have you ever got a ticket, Joe?
Yes.
Go down the highway, all of a sudden you see that blinking light behind you.
Yep.
Now, when that guy comes up, he pulls you over. And he comes over. Does he yell at you? Joey, you idiot! What are you thinking? How did your mother raise you? What are you doing? Does he yell at you like that? No.
No.
You're not scared because you're scared because what he's going to do. He's getting ready to do something to you. He's not going to stick you with a stun gun or shoot you. He's going to give you a ticket. That's all he's going to do. But you're getting a reprimand. We don't want a reprimand. got, I'm very familiar with this because I get a lot of them. Don't ask Tracy how many. But the thing is, he's very polite, Mr. Tansing. I see your license. Very polite. But the thing is, he's holding you accountable. Then on the other hand, Joe, let's just say that same cop, let's say you're buzzing down the highway, 80, 90 miles an hour, you're in a hurry, you got this, that, for whatever reason. Let's just say you got a valid reason. But no cars out there, you're not dangerous, you're just screaming. Now, let's just say that cop doesn't have a car, doesn't have a motorcycle, doesn't have a car. He's on the side of the road, and he's got a little laser gun, and he clocked you going too fast, and he's screaming. As you go by, you see him jumping up and down. He's screaming. He's chasing you, and he's, waving, and he's yelling, what are you doing, Bubba? Are you worried, Joe?
No, I'm not worried. As long as he didn't get my license plate number.
Yeah. You're not worried. What's he going to do? He can't do anything. He can't get me. But if he's over there yelling, screaming, that's why yelling doesn't work. You got to have, what they have, you got to become the cop with a system. You got to have a way where you keep tabs on them. Am I getting your attention, Joey?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Here's what and it can't be more than when you deal with trainees, it has to be a monthly. You have to teach in the business 1 month at a time. And so here's what I would do. Let's just say, gone on this whole thing 2 times. I'm going to give you the punchline. And if this doesn't do it, Joe, I can come back later and we can talk about it some more if you want, okay? But let's get to the punchline. Everybody's listened to 5 of these tapes. Here's what I did. You do what you want. What I did was every district, once you went, even to part-time management, every district had to turn in a report. At a specific time, 10 a.m. on the first of the month. The first day after month end, they had to turn in their numbers. They had to turn in their report. That report is very simply what they did. And what it was I made up a simple form, whereas I had a log of recruits, and I had the key information. So you can look at them in a column. I was doing this not in the beginning. I did it because we didn't have everything on a computer, and this was a way of keeping up with it. I'd have the names, age, where they were, what market they were in, things like that, to see if there's any problem area. There was a form. Now, think of it like this. When they're district leaders, they're beginners. They probably only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these things. If they couldn't keep up and do a report and they were small, I knew they'd never be worth a stink when they got bigger. Mm-hmm. And if I taught them how to do this stuff and held their feet to the fire, just like teaching kids to do homework, because homework is not an option, Buster. You're going to do the homework, and as soon as you get used to do that, then you can see how quick can I do it and get on with life. Then you can learn this is not a negotiable item. Non-negotiable. 30, 40 years in the business, I've told people about this, and they think if they do it, it's negotiable for the guys. Do it if you want. Maybe they'll try a little bit. No, this has got to be something like your key to graduation has to do with you turning these reports in. Because once you get out on your own, you're going to have to do reports. If you can't do reports, then I have to do the reports for you, and you're essentially a baby, and you're going to stay in my training center the rest of your life, and frankly, I don't like you that much. And I'm going to be able to stand you for a year or two, and then you're going to be like a dead fish. You got to move on. Chucky, come on. You're supposed to get this stuff, move on. I got other people who got to come behind you. You're not going to make me enough money in your life for me to build all my hopes and dreams around what you might do. I've got to have, and then even if you were, you'd get run over by a truck, knowing you, and then I'd be back to ground zero again. So I got to have, I've got a video on eggs in a basket that, and my job was to keep them warm and let them develop. While they were sitting in the basket, this is what I had them doing, teaching themselves the business. See, I wanted them to teach. I can only teach them from the outside. They got to teach themselves. They have to find out what they don't know. They got to prove to themselves what they don't know. If I don't put them in charge like this, they just think they're an employee working in my office and I'm doing the numbers, yelling at them to do more. But if they have numbers and they've got to do the reports, they understand they've got a little business inside of my business. And they're supposed to produce results. See, my job as a leader is not just to build leaders, it's produce growth. I got to deliver every month. I'm a CEO on Wall Street. I got to deliver every quarter. Well, if they're going to be in business, they're going to have to deliver every day, week, month. That's how you make money. You deliver. And so they've got to find out what they don't know. They've got to learn what a sense of urgency is. If I don't put them in charge of the numbers, I'm actually handicapping them. And then we wonder why we produce people that they don't know how to do nothing. It's their own darn fault. We created incompetent people. We never gave them this chance to develop. What if you had a kid, same school, teacher taught all day long, never had to do any homework, never had to do any work, and then they took tests and they flunked. People say, I don't know, these are the dumbest kids ever met. No, stupid teachers, stupid parents. You didn't raise them right. You didn't teach them they had to do stuff on their own if they were going to learn. I'm ranting and raving, aren't I, Joey? That's what I did. I mean, you got to make things happen if you're going to be a leader.
That's right. So go back to the report. So they log the recruits, their premium. What else would you have on that report?
Okay, yeah, I got up there. They would have a log, and then they would have a copy. They'd have a log and then a copy of each thing. It's easy to do now. We can do it off the computer. But they have a copy of each sheet, but they have a log. And that way it make it easy for me to go da-da-da-da-da-da. And if I want to drill down and look at more information, I can see a copy of their application. But they have a log for clients, for sales. And the same thing. There'd be a log, and it would have like the name, the age. And I'd put things like the beneficiary, the amounts, things in our business that make a difference, like the securities, the amounts, so you could see if things that would create a red flag, like if you're recruiting people too old, too young, out of the market, if you're making sales to people too old, too young, out of the market, they're not going to be able to pay for it. So I would have them also, there was a comment line on these forms. The last thing was comments. So if there was anything in here that was a red flag, I'd want them to make a comment so they would know, I would know that they knew this was a chancy piece of business or a chancy recruit, a little bit out of the market, that they took a chance on, even though it was not, it might not be as good, it might be a little iffy, but they took a chance because of this reason, and they wrote a comment out the side to let me know they knew that.
Okay.
And they wouldn't wait for me to have to point that out to them. Okay, because that's the way I can see, is this somebody who's got business judgment? Remember on that first thing where I had the 5 list of things? If as they're going through this thing, I find out, do they have good business judgment or not? Are they going to be able to see? This is also, are they confident and can they do it at speed? How much can they get done in a month? How can what are they going to do when they get out of their own? But this is what they're doing under my supervision.
Yeah. So this would be them and their team. Would they also?
Yeah, this is them and their team.
Okay.
I could care less about how much they did personally. Once they went to manage, I could care less what they did personally because their job was to grow their numbers. And obviously, if they didn't have a team, they had to do it all themselves. Ideally, they have so many people that it's hard for a manager not to work. If you've got lots of activity, it's hard for a mother or dad who have 12 kids not to work. I'm not going to say, to a mom or a dad who's got 12 kids, yeah, but did you do anything this month? Or did your kids do all your work? Say, they weren't. They had to keep up with it. So it's a matter of, this gave me a system. So you take your key areas, my recruits, my clients, same thing on activity. I keep up with the activity numbers. So they would have to turn in, at the end of the month, they would come in and we would have a little meeting. Now, how long I spent at this meeting? 5 minutes. I didn't have time to screw around with them. 5 minutes. I'd have 40 guys lined up inside my office. The one with the biggest numbers came in first. It'd be like going to the principals. They'd come in and we'd close the door. And they'd show me their reports. 10 o'clock, not 10:01. I gave the very few rules, but this one they had to do. Because I had to find out if I could trust them in business. In the 5 minute meeting, behind closed doors, they would show me last month, which is basically this. Keep it simple, but enough to where they know what they did, and then you get their projections for this month. I'm not telling them what they're going to do. They're telling me what they're going to do this month. But see, they're giving me their targets, Joe. And so by doing that, they learn how to go through a year where they can go and, get targets. And even if they put a target out there and they don't get it, well, at least they're learning, you see?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, they're learning. They're finding out what they don't know. They're learning how to ask questions. They're not just learning to do it. They're learning how to collapse time frames, how to be responsible, how to be in charge. And so these were the things that I did. I don't want to take too long on this. We can talk more later. In fact, call me if you want to do it again, and then we'll pick you another one. But this was simply, it was a simple thing, not complicated, but I essentially delegated the record keeping, the tracking, and I created small businesses inside my big business. Lots of small business created for me a big business. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And if they couldn't handle the small, it was obvious they were not capable of going out and taking a bigger contract and doing the bigger business. Now, we haven't gotten into, but and let's do one on replacement sometime, okay? Let's do one on replacement. What they leave behind. But
no, this is important.
Ahead.
No, this is good. This is where some things that I needed help with as far as the system and how you run it, because those recruiting numbers are outrageous. And the question is, the big question that we always get, what do you do with all those people? Now I see, and our folks,
they had to train them. You recruit them, you train them. See, that's when I found out, when they turn in the recruiting numbers, I could see, well, what happened to this guy? What happened to that guy? What happened to that guy? If they weren't doing anything, then I would drop in there and get it fixed. Yeah. They had to prove to me, if you recruited, you trained them. If you wrote the business, you wrote the sale, you followed up on it.
Yep.
I'm not going to follow up with you. What am I, your secretary? If you can't write clean business, I don't need you. I can't get big. See, everything was off the thing, how can we get big? Well, if I've got to do anything for you, everybody's got to be an independent. See, this whole thing, remember the independent leader?
Yep.
How can I build independent RVP, strong, growing, independent? Well, you start it from the first moment. They get promoted. Congratulations, you make a big deal on stage, and now, come over here, son. Let me show you what big boys do. And you don't have much to do because you ain't going to be doing that much, but you're going to learn how to do that. So once you get to where you're doing hundreds a month, it's going to be like playing patty cake to you. You would have been doing it all your life. You know, we would have taught them the numbers, and they can do it in a second nature thing. As hard as it is for them to do it in their districts and divisions and regionals, the easier it's going to be for them to do it when they're out on their own. It'll be second nature, and they can do huge. But this allows me to build independent leaders, and this allows me to keep growing. If I have a job, me and my secretaries are keeping up with all their paperwork, all their persistence, all their follow-up, and training all their people, we can't get big. But if I have fully independent units, every unit is independent, I can keep adding and adding and adding because it's no more wear and tear on me. Same thing of putting these videos up on YouTube. You know, I do it one time, then it's up there, and we could have, like you've watched a bunch of these videos. You know what? I didn't have a sleepless night. It didn't, like, suck the life out of me because you were watching these other videos that you watched. I didn't even know you watched them. They're up there. Or we could have 10,000, 100,000, a million people can watch the videos, no wear and tear on me. Well, that's how I set up my day shop, Joe. If you're going to be in here, you've got to be independent. You cannot create grief for me, or I can't afford to have you around.
Gotcha.
I don't need your business if it's going to be a burden. I need your business, and I need you because you're making a contribution. But if you're a burden because you screw up my fine-tuned Ferrari of growth, well, I got to throw your butt out of my Ferrari. I can't afford you in leadership. I got to roll you back underneath somebody I can trust. And so if that's too tough, Joe, I don't really care. I don't really care. I'm trying to develop people who can make $250,000, $500,000 a year as fast as possible. There's a certain minimum thing. Is it too tough for a little Chucky to do his arithmetic? You know, when I was in third grade, my uncle sat down every night. It took me forever to get my addition, my subtraction, and my multiplication, and sitting with those cards. Well, Uncle Martin sat down with me hours. Do you know what? We did that for about a month. And after that, I had that stuff imprinted in my mind. As a result, algebra, trigonometry, geometry, the rest of my life. Even now today, I can do calculations in my head because at third grade, Uncle Martin sat down with me for hours. We did those flip charts, and I memorized that stuff. And that made the rest of my life in math and easy. So, is that helpful, Joey?
No, that's very helpful. I think this part was big because I'm being that I'm a recovering control freak. I needed a system. You know, I got a system, but it's not as I see. You know, we do a business plan, but I see the part where I'm missing. That I need to have them take care of their numbers, report their numbers last month, every month. And I got some ideas on the recruits, the production and stuff to put on that log. So I'm going to implement that.
Well, you see what we're talking about, these 5 things. You know, like this is what we got. How do you teach rookies become superstars? You know, how to teach them how to make things happen, how to be independent leaders who can amount to something. Well, how do you get them to where they're confident in these 5 areas we talked about earlier? Mm-hmm. How do you get them to where they can be confident enough, and you know you wouldn't even have to worry about it if they moved to another state and started from scratch and pioneered a new area? Well, because you've seen how they operate in all these key areas. They demonstrated their core competence. It's not like they promised to you, well, I'll be good, I'll be a great guy, you can trust me to make big decisions, to handle decisions, I'll manage my money, I'll do things like that. And you could put that in the reports. If you wanted to, you could put into your reports how much money you have saved, how much you making, how much you save, or you got the money for your taxes, okay, you can add all these things as far as how many leaders you're developing and things like that. Licenses, that's another thing. How many licenses did you get this month? And so whatever the key things are, how many security sales, you have logs for those areas that matter. And by doing that, turning in your teaching, and then that's important rather than yelling at them like, you're making, and you don't, at the end of the month, you walk up to them and say, your report, need your sales log. Can I see your client log? Can I see your new license log? Can I see your securities log? Now, of course, they won't have those licenses early on, but once they get a regional leader, and can I have your projections for next month? You're doing it very low key, and their hearts are racing inside. They all panic. The people who do the biggest numbers, I don't care how much they do, they're all intimidated. They hate to go to the principal's office because they all know they could have done more, and you're just glad to have anybody who's doing anything. But on the other hand, you can go in and without a system, you sit there yelling at them all night long, and it doesn't have one bit of effect on their life. And it keeps you in control without being a control freak. Because the rest of the month, you can care what system, care how they do it, just get it done. End of the month, though, you're going to show me what you got. So you like that, Joey?
I love it. I'm writing out my chart right now so I can get it done.
Okay. All right. Hey, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you.